Hey everyone, it's Byron. I'm here to testify for Jesus Christ. Today I want to talk about a cycle that I've identified that I hope would be helpful for you. And this is a cycle of wickedness. And I want to just talk about some things that I have discovered over the past 4 or 5 months and tie them in with Scripture. And the first scripture I want to read is Psalm 17:13. And I mentioned this in yesterday's video. I want to continue to talk about it a little bit. And it says, this is David speaking in a psalm. And he says, "Arise, O Lord, disappoint him." And that's basically like stop him, prevent this guy from dealing with me. Or it goes on to say, "Cast him down, deliver my soul from the wicked." So disappoint the wicked, stop them from messing with me. But then it goes on to say, "Which is thy sword?" The wicked, which is thy sword? If you go to several places in the Bible, you're going to see that God uses bad or wicked people to bring judgment. And that would be judgment even on the house of the Lord, because Peter said judgment begins in the house of the Lord. Let me go to Psalm 89 just to give you an example. Jesus is God is speaking here in Psalm 89 through, I guess, David in a psalm. And it says, if his children, and when it says his there, it's talking about Jesus. If his children forsake my law and walk not in my judgments, so God is speaking there, if they break my statutes and keep not my commandments, then will I visit their transgressions with the rod and their iniquities with stripes. So God is saying that if you mess up as a Christian, if you are the seed of Jesus Christ, if you mess up here on this earth, he's going to visit you with a rod. Something's going to happen. He's going to discipline you. He's going to chastise you in some manner. But he goes on to say, nevertheless, my loving kindness will I not utterly take from him, nor suffer my faithfulness to fail. And God has said in that psalm that Jesus Christ will live forever, and his seed, or those who believe on Christ, Christians. But in this life, you can suffer from the rod of God's indignation. I think it says in Isaiah 10, you can suffer in this life, and that is called tribulation. There's a couple of churches in the book of Revelation that actually talks about tribulation. One is the church of Thyatira, Revelation chapter 2, starting at verse 18. Jesus states to that church he's going to put them into great tribulation. So if he puts a church into great tribulation, who is he going to use to bring about the tribulation? And that would be the wicked spoken of in Psalm 17:13. Deliver my soul from the wicked. This is David speaking again, talking about, I'm still back at Psalm 17:13. Deliver my soul from the wicked, which is thy sword. So Lord, I acknowledge your sword on this earth to deal with problems are the wicked. I mean, it's not like Christians are going to go on a war campaign. It's forbidden for Christians to do so. You can hear some people talk about going on a war campaign as pretending to be Christians anyway. This also ties into the end time purification. Yesterday I used the word cleanse, the end time purification of the church. And Daniel speaks of it in Daniel chapter 12. I just want to read that. 12 verse 10, it says, many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. I don't necessarily want to say I'm wise, but I do understand God's process. Peter said judgment begins in the house of the Lord. There's already been Christian churches go through tribulation. There are going to be Christian churches go through tribulation in the future, as stated by Jesus Christ in Revelation. But the cycle that I hopefully mentioned at the beginning of this, I want to talk about the cycle. Early on this year, I began to do videos, and the videos were talking about the revolution. They may not all mention the revolution, but they're talking about how the revolution has gone about. One of the things that I mentioned is that in 1965, Lyndon B. Johnson began what he called the War on Poverty. And in doing the War on Poverty, he created around the United States homes without fathers just by passing legislation to the point where I'll subsidize your family if you don't have a father. So men moved out of houses. It specifically hampered the black community because they were the ones that would benefit the most from getting the money. So the father would almost like bow out in order for them to be able to collect subsidies. And if he were caught being around his family, they would take those subsidies back. Now, that is wicked. If you want to know anything about wickedness, that is wicked. That is manufactured wickedness right there. And I mentioned in the video I did on this subject that a large percentage of fatherless people get in trouble with the law. They drop out of high school. So you can say the United States government at one point sponsored programs that created children that were hard to deal with or wicked children. Those wicked children have had time to grow up now. And those wicked children are now running businesses or running things around you. And they are also running organizations and movements that are going to bring about the sword, are going to bring about tribulation. And that's what I wanted to talk about is this cycle. If you don't do your job right in a society, such as be Christian, bring on Christian values, teach fathers to how to raise a family, how to be the role model that he needs to be, etc. If you don't do that, then you're going to be manufacturing children who will do wickedly. And those children will grow up being the wicked that brings the sword to your life, as mentioned in Psalm 17, verse 13. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen every time, but in the United States, and currently here in the United States, it's clear as day. It is clear as day. There's no escaping what's going on. I'm not talking about a race or anything like that. That is specifically the problem. I'm talking about fatherlessness, allowing children to grow up in honestly, looking for a role model and then fixing themselves on a bad role model and then learning to do wickedness and then moving forward to be the sword of God. The revolution in the United States it's all about that. So I just want to mention that way you can you can at least have my perspective on it to toss around in your thoughts and things that go on. So anyway, I'll let you go. Bye.